We're live. Good evening, everybody. This over here, give my
Ah,
phone.
yes.
that that water-headed guy right there,
Hey,
the one with the big
water.
head.
He
Look at
won't
it.
kid.
Is that your way of committing suicide?
No, I was just striking my face down.
Oh man, wait till you get my age. It just goes to hell. um, Kevin Kane, the haunted dog guy, and he's right there with us. And thank you
Yeah.
very much for joining us. And we're going to put this dark lady in here for whatever that's worth. Um, so anyway, we got an interesting night. But as we get started, how many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel today?
I noticed today I think it was 989, so I just need 11 people.
11 more, folks. Go to
Yeah.
YouTube, My Haunted Dolls, Kevin Kane, because other people have stolen his name over a period of time. So go to
Oh,
YouTube and subscribe. Just 11 more. For the 1,000th person that subscribes, he'll take you to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. But wait a minute, he can't because they're
I'm
closed.
subscribing and resubscribing because I want to go to Ruth Chris.
You ain't going to go, they're closed.
nobody
You can order out.
I've got a. Anyway, he's real close. Now, after you go there, you need to go to Abnormal Alabama and subscribe to our channel. Ours is slowly building. I haven't promoted it quite as hard as I promoted Kevin's. I spend more time promoting yours than I do my own. And
Huh?
we both have a bunch of books to sell, and we need to sell them. I need to sell them more than Kevin does. Kevin can use the extra money because he's gone in debt for this palatial mansion. He's trying to be the build the Graceland of Chelsea. So you go there, you'll see a statue of Kevin at the entrance of the drive there. So
I think
anyway,
not.
We do need to get you on each side of those concrete doll
gargoyles.
or voodoo doll or something.
All right. So abnormalalabama.com, datingthedead.com, and you'll see my book cover over here up in the corner. And I'm writing a new book. I know you find that surprising, but this one's kind of a runoff of the Dating the Dead book, but it's interesting relationships. One guy even married his cell phone in a Las Vegas ceremony. So there's always hope for you, Kevin. All right. So we're going to start this off. We got a lot of stuff going. I don't know if Catherine's got anything, stories pulled up. Kevin, I think he said he's got 3 lengthy stories pulled up. I'm going to share a story called The Mortician. And that kind of gave way for the backdrop here. Now, as I share this story, instead of looking at me, I want you to look at that house right there as the backdrop for this story. So this will take a few minutes. So just sit back, relax, get in the mood for a story that is said the setting is in a funeral home. Have you ever loved someone with such an intensity and depth of emotion that you actually hurt? You felt pain, abysmal, dizzying depths of despair, and unbearable longing that enveloped your entire existence because of this uncontrollable outflow of the essence of your soul. Your world exists solely to experience more numbing pain. Henry Wendelman suffered this experience every day, every hour, every second, that to him was a newfound eternity of suffering, beginning anew every unceasing moment. He thought of Angelica. She was as beautiful as a sensual Madonna. She was Innocence and Eve, Jezebel and Mother Mary, a hallowed saint and a damned sinner, all personified in the iconoclastic figure of a 16-year-old girl. He loved her. She was oblivious to his existence. So Henry suffered. His parents, first generation German immigrants who had left the old country 35 years before, had little patience with their 18-year-old son's dilemma. They were solid, practical, and above all, respectable, hard-working, church-going members of the mid-sized town of Johnsonville. Respectability was paramount for the role they served in the community. Hans Willerman, Henry's father, was the town's only undertaker. He had worked hard and diligently to build a successful business in post-war Southern rural America. Hans now owned mortgage-free the funeral parlor house where he lived with his family and almost had paid off the note owed for the monument business next door. Henry had grown up surrounded by the trappings of the business of death. He had played hide and seek with his brother and sister in caskets, knew the smell of flowers and formaldehyde, and when very small, knew that when the somber music began downstairs, he must be quiet. As a young boy, he had sat motionless on the stairwell and observed dozens, maybe even over 100 funeral services. He could hum the dirges and sing along effortlessly and knew the difference in a profitable service versus one that would just serve the required purpose. He knew what type of reception would be presented and how emotional the attendees would be according to the religion and ethnicity of the deceased. He knew the sequence of events required to prepare and place a person in the ground. He had not been allowed in the mortuary room until his 18th birthday. At this time, his father had decided that Henry would also become a mortician. His older brother, Christian, ran the monument business. Hans was from the old country. The father made the decisions for the family. Henry understood. He would obey without questions. He became a mortician. His introduction to the business of death was in stages. His father required Henry to assist in the preparation of the embalming room and the cleaning of the porcelain table and instruments after the process was completed. Henry drove the 1928 Cadillac hearse to retrieve the deceased and transported, then brought the body into the funeral home. He assisted with the washing and disinfecting of the corpse, males only, of course, and learned the actions required to exercise the arms and legs to prevent the inception of rigor mortis. He learned in stages over months of first observing and then actually performing himself how to dress, barber, and shave the deceased. The last part, the public display of the skill and expertise of the mortician, was how to create a lifelike illusion for a corpse. The mortician is beyond all else a skilled makeup artist. Death is not an attractive event. The mortician must have the skill to present, even though for a very short time, death as an acceptable circumstance for those still living. The acceptance of the fact of death is a given. All know it is inevitable. A large part of accepting the state of death is due to the act of visual deception. The lips are sewn expertly together, then waxed to present the closest appearance possible to the natural features of the deceased. Small curved discs are inserted into the eyelids to present a round, full image of an eye in the act of being closed and resting. Age discolorations, bruises, flushed, and ruptured capillaries are covered by layers of makeup expertly blended to match the appearance and coloring of the deceased. Injuries are skillfully sewn closed with tiny stitches using bleached catgut and then disguised with makeup. Lips are discreetly rouged, eyebrows, nose, and ear hair plucked, and the corpse dressed according to the wishes of the next of kin. Next in the embalming procedure, Henry learned how to drain the body fluids, how to seal and prevent seepage, and the right technique according to the type and size of the corpse, and presented to the family. The mortician is always nearby to make adjustments to the inevitable progression of decay. It's a wonderful act of intended deception. Henry learned, he practiced, he soon was a capable and respected mortician's assistant. Yet, he still suffered. Angelica was now in her late teens and the exemplary example of the accumulation of youth, femininity, exuberance, vivaciousness, intelligence, and beauty. Henry saw her only in church, being extremely shy and possessing the familial trait of a tall and awkward gauntness, which likened him to a poorly constructed scarecrow in the need of maintenance, and wearing the dark, somber garb as determined by his occupation. If Angelica was aware of his existence, she was extremely adept in concealing this from all who were a part of her world. She had long, rich brown hair, possessing sheen of silvery satin. Her skin was as flawless and clean as the purest alabaster porcelain. Her eyes were a sparkling light green that flashed with intelligence and amusement as she observed the world which seemed only to be present for her enjoyment. Her voice was a light, clear, vibrating resonance, not unlike a bell choir with a range of enchanting melodies. She sang with a naturalness and ease which the most experienced trained vocalist would envy. Her person was diminutive, but in perfect proportion. Henry suffered. His heart, his soul, his existence doted on the thought of Angelica. Such was not to be. Angelica married. Henry was destroyed. He withdrew into the security of his coexistence with the dead. The funerals were constant and as changing as the seasons. His father retired and Henry bought the business. He ran it with the efficiency, frugality, and attention to pristine service as his father had done before. The services were absolute works of art. The funeral home, located on South Lee Street, was a reconditioned, large 1870s home. The house set regally back as respectable 20 yards from the street. The yard and grounds were perfectly manicured. It fronted the street fully with a sign notating the business tastefully displayed in a wrought iron frame. A large faced clock was prominently displayed in the front window. Dark, heavy curtains covered the remaining windows. A wide covered porch circled the house. Numerous rocking chairs and swings were placed appropriately, as were large ashtrays and discreet spittoons. The front entrance door was a double in width and each half open from the center. Rose-colored glass framed the tops and sides. It had a wide brass kick guard and brass ornament knobs. Entering the house brought one into the foyer. The door to the left opened to a wide room with couches, stuffed chairs, sofas, settees, and numerous ornate tables with tall lamps. The lampshades, as were the paintings and wallpaper, were somber and tasteful beyond reproach. The floor was covered with deep burgundy red carpet. This was the waiting room. The door to the right opened to the viewing room. The same dark carpet was present, only there were fewer sitting arrangements. Folding wooden chairs with dark red covers were available for seating if necessary. Wiedemann Funeral Home was clearly displayed on the back of each. Continuing down the hall brought one to the stairs. They ascended to the second floor, terminating in a landing with open banister framed hallways to both the left and the right, which then turned back left and right again to provide entry to the 4 upstairs rooms. These were the family's private quarters. The downstairs room, past the viewing room on the right, was the casket display area. 12 to 15 caskets, ranging from the practical basic finished pine to the mahogany satin lined with brass fittings and hardware, were tastefully displayed. The room to the left, past the waiting room, remained securely locked at all times. Visitors were present in the building. This was the mortuary. Access to all but those designated by license or employment was strictly forbidden. The windows to this room were covered completely with thick black fabric, and heavy curtains were kept closed. Discretion and respect was paramount. There could never be any hint of impropriety. The deceased were brought to the rear entrance of the building. An 8-foot ivy-covered wall surrounded the back of the premises. The body was removed from the hearse and wheeled into the mortuary on a solidly built wheeled wooden gurney. The body was covered completely with a sheet. Once inside the mortuary and the doors securely closed and locked, the process would begin. Time passed as it always had and always will. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, and seasons flowed with a serenity and inevitability that only time possesses. Time means nothing to time. Time does not care how or even if we measure or define its passing. It does, however, mean everything to mortal humans. 10 years passed. Henry was now a steadfast, confirmed bachelor. His parents had passed. The funeral home the next town performed those services. And Henry now lived alone in the upstairs rooms. He had no close friends and few acquaintances. The winter of 1938 was just the beginning. Nights were becoming colder, the days noticeably shorter. The autumn had passed and the leaves had fallen. Henry remembered this day for the remainder of his life. He knew what he had for breakfast, his actions that morning: bathing, shaving, brushing his teeth, combing his hair, getting dressed, and the bright sun casting long, slender lines of light through the windows above the doorway, striking the candelabra, which exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors which reflected and danced enchantingly around the foyer. He remembered the headlines on the newspaper. He remembered speaking to the mailman and the letters he received. He remembered the instructions he gave to the cleaning woman. There were no services planned. He also knew to be patient. Then, above all, he remembered hearing the knock on the front door and hearing it open slowly and close firmly. There was a pregnant silence. Henry inwardly sighed. Someone had died. The process would begin. Henry walked from the mortuary, where he had been examining the new Noyer embalming machine he had ordered from the General Electric Company, and was staggered momentarily when he recognized the bereaved standing in the foyer. They were the parents of Angelica. Quickly regaining his composure, he greeted them warmly and asked how he might be of service, thinking a parent must have passed or a relative. He was stunned beyond the ability to speak upon hearing the request. Angelica had died. Angelica had died. Angelica had died. He heard nothing else. Angelica had died. Her appendix had ruptured. She had died of septicemia. Would he please send a hearse to their address and bring her to the funeral parlor? If arrangements could be completed, the burial service would be the First Baptist Church 2 days later at 2 p.m. Interment would follow. The businessman took over and detailed arrangements were enacted. They selected a very nice casket. Henry learned Angelica had separated from her husband and had been living with her parents for over a year. She had no children. Her husband's whereabouts was unknown. After exchanging somber condolences, they left. He would not see them until the viewing the next evening at 7 p.m. The passions hidden deep within Henry for over 10 years now exploded. He went to the small business office and called the assistant on duty. Instructions and address were provided. The deceased would be picked up within an hour. A family member would assist at the home. The body would be brought to the mortuary. Henry went back into the back room and closed the door. Mechanically, he began to prepare for the arrival. He wiped the embalming table and prepared a mixture of disinfectant, rose water, and aloe to cleanse the body. He ensured the sponges were rinsed and placed by the table. He removed 2 1-quart cans of formaldehyde, loosened the screw tops, and placed them by the embalming machine. He filled the tank with water, turned the valves to shut off flow, and placed a switch to the on position. A low electric hum filled the room. The pressure gauge quickly reached the maximum 60 pounds of pressure. He released the valve, and the fluid drained quickly into the sink. Henry set the machine pressure to 20 pounds maximum with an initial starting pressure of 5. Too much initial pressure would destroy the arteries and veins, making proper embalming saturation impossible. The body fluids must be slowly forced from the corpse at low pressure and replaced by the formaldehyde at a high saturating pressure. He poured the 2 quarts of fluid into the machine's tank. He placed the cotton wadding, eye disc, and makeup containers close by. He turned the bright light on the table, and by the use of the elevating gear, raised the foot of the table higher than the head. This would ensure proper drainage of body fluids. Henry checked his tools again, placed the trocar next to the table, and sat in a wooden chair. As he heard the hearse arrive, he began to cry. Being a withdrawn, quiet man with no close friends or acquaintances, it was not noticed that he cried inside for the next 40 years. Henry assisted with bringing Angelica into the mortuary and placed her body on the table. He insisted he be left alone and not disturbed. Only after the assistant had left and the door was securely locked did he remove the sheet. The viewing was the following evening. Angelica was absolutely beautiful. Only the setting and the sadness belied the tragedy. Her face, hair, expression, dress, everything about her was as she would suddenly smile and rise up from the somber casket and depart to sad surroundings. Henry did not leave her side. He allowed no one else to attend her. The following day, as Henry transported her to the church service, he insisted on riding in the hearse with her. After the service, he again was the only person in attendance with her as the hearse carried her to the nearby cemetery. She was buried in the family plot beside a sister who had died at birth. Henry did not attend the burial, and he remained in the hearse. After the casket was removed, he drove the hearse alone back to the funeral home. Henry Weidman lived another 40 years. The funeral home remained operational until 3 years before his death. He closed the business, and the house became his private residence. He lived alone in the large house, never receiving visitors or socializing with the community. He attended church and was respected as an intelligent, shy man who had served his community well. One summer morning, the mailman noticed Henry had not removed the previously delivered mail for 2 days. This was something Henry always did punctually. The sheriff was notified and entry was made into the home. Having been in the large house many times over the previous years, Sheriff Henderson knew the layout. He entered through the front door and searched the downstairs rooms. Henry was not there, nor did he answer the calls. Sheriff Henderson ascended the stairwell and entered the rooms on the right. One was a long, unused storage room, the other an office and bathroom. The tall, dark door to the rear left room was closed and locked. Sheriff Henderson knocked and shouted, but there was no reply. He forced the door open. The room was dark. Sheriff Henderson automatically reached for the light switch and flipped the lever. Henry, was sitting in a large, overstuffed chair. His head had fallen onto his chest, and he leaned slightly forward. Sheriff Henderson later said that in 25 years of law duty, he had never seen anything as what was next revealed. Across the room, facing Henry, reposing in a magnificent mahogany and brass trimmed coffin, was a crystal clear cover. It was Angelica. No, she was not as beautiful as the day she had supposedly been married 40 years before, but Henry didn't care because Henry really loved her. And there is my story to share.
Wow.
Was that intense enough for you?
Yeah, that was creepy. That was macabre.
It was, and the instant that was kind of almost like a Edgar Allan Poe. What's the other guy that did the birds?
Oh, Alfred Hitchcock.
Alfred Hitchcock. Not ghostly, but still so intense and macabre. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's like the episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. So anyway, there is the lady in question. And I'll just flip through some pictures because this was a true story, by the way.
Oh,
That makes it even more interesting, right?
yeah.
I mean, back in those days, have you ever been in a funeral home like that?
Not like that. I've been in modern looking funeral homes. But
Oh, I worked, and I've said this, you probably know, I worked at funeral home up in Nashville that sits at Centennial Park. And that is it right there. That's not the same funeral home, but it was a 150-year-old funeral home. And it's still standing. It's I can't remember the name. I almost on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, it's still there. It was bought out by a company, and the guy that owned it retired to Arizona. Actually, right after I was not working there, I remained friends with him for a long time. Anyway, so there you go. So I now believe that our friend Kevin has maybe another interesting tale for us, Kevin. You have something to entertain us with this Tuesday evening of April the 14th. And I don't know. Can we handle much tonight? Is it things overwhelming to us, or should we tell Mickey Mouse stories instead?
No, I want to tell creepy stories. That's what I'm good at.
All right. Well, I'm going to shrink us out of here. Okay, I think when I close that, you can no longer hear me. But I'm going to just let you be on screen and listen to you talk.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready. All right. This was by special request of Lady Catherine. Wanted to hear some stories about maybe a gnome or trolls or fairies. And this one's a good gnome story that might be true. Maybe it's an urban legend. We don't know. That's the good thing about an urban legend. There's no way to really prove it other than the story being shared around, but it leaves us to wonder. And this is about a gnome. This is called the garden gnome. Juliet stood on the sidewalk, hands on her hips, and stared at the house. How depressing. Her aunt Camilla had passed away just 3 short months ago. An aneurysm or stroke is what the doctors had said. Camilla had been in her 90s and a spinster. With no husband or children, the probate court had informed Juliet that she was the nearest living relative and had therefore been awarded her aunt's estate. At first, Juliet looked upon it as a windfall. She had hardly even known her aunt, actually her great aunt, and could count the number of times she had visited with her on one hand. She then sadly realized how lonely the old woman's life must have been. Even her closest relative was almost a complete stranger. Juliet tried to put that feeling behind her as she drove to the small New England town where her new home was located. She tried to avoid thinking about the point that she was, in fact, not much different from Camilla. Juliet had been an only child. Her parents were long since passed on, and she had no real friends to speak of. At the age of 52, she was pretty much resolved to the fact that she would be a spinster herself. She had been living on Social Security income ever since an auto accident in her 30s and had a small apartment that she could barely afford. It was for this reason that she had decided to pack up her few belongings and move into the old house. Looking at the house from the outside, she could see that she had a lot of work ahead of her. In addition to a thorough cleaning inside, sorting through all of her ounce possessions, the yard needed some serious tender loving care. The lawn had grown so tall that it had gone to seed, and it was riddled with weeds. A row of 5 things that might have once been considered shrubs were so overgrown that they had just about covered the house's front porch. The wrought iron railings of the porch that did manage to peek through the bare spots were wrapped in dead remnants of ivy. Ah, well, she rubbed the back of her neck in anticipation of the coming pain. It's not like I don't have time. Hey, free house, right? The first thing that had to go, though, was the ugly old garden gnome that was poking its disturbing head up from the tall grass. It was Mel, bearded, wearing a red hat and smoking a pipe. She had never been a fan of lawn ornaments, especially gnomes. They were so tacky. This one, though, was especially disturbing. Its glazing was faded and crackled, leaving the face looking jaundiced and wrinkled, as if it had once been an actual living creature that had died and was rotting away. Yet that thing has to go, she thought to herself. First things first, though, I don't even own a lawnmower. Nearly a week had gone by, and she had all but forgotten about the gnome. She had visited the local hardware store and bought the first pair of hedge trimmers she'd ever owned. A man would be stopping by later in the week with a lawnmower he had for sale on Craigslist. She had spoken to him on the phone earlier in the day, and he promised that it was in great working order. She had already decided that she would use her feminine wiles when he arrived and try to whittle the price down a little. Not that I have much left in the wiles department, she smirked. She stopped in the front hall and looked at herself in the full-length mirror mounted to the closet door. She had to admit that the work boots, shorts, flannel shirt, and her aunt's old sun hat did look somewhat cute on her. Juliet was still hacking away at the first shrub, which was starting to resemble a real hedge, when a red pickup pulled into the drive. The man who got out of the cab seemed to be about her age, and not too bad looking either. Juliet pulled off her gardening gloves and jogged down the drive toward the truck. Hey there, stranger. So I believe you have a mower for me? The man surveyed the yard and let out a long whistle. Yeah, and it sure looks like you could use it. My name's Jim, by the way. You must be Juliet. Yes, so how much did we decide on? 25, but, said Jim as he cocked his head. I didn't realize that I was headed to old Camilla's place. I'd about give it to you free just to see the place cleaned up. Juliet smirked. Yeah, it's pretty much a hot mess. Well, how's the old bird doing anyway? Juliet bit her lower lip and winced. Oh, she passed away about 3 months ago. That's why the yard was in such bad shape. I'm afraid that I haven't really had the chance to come out before now. Oh, geez, way to go, Jim. Open mouth, insert foot. He removed his baseball cap and ran a hand over the top of his head, ruffling his unkempt hair. I'm sorry, so are you her granddaughter? Ha, barked Juliet, giddy with the compliment. No, I'm sort of her great niece, I guess. I never really did see too much of her, but apparently she didn't have any other family. Yeah, very sad. Jim brightened back up. Hey, let me get this old mower down. Come to think of it, I will let you have it. Just bought a new one, and I would have just put it up at the curb anyway. I thought I'd try Craigslist first, but you seem like a nice gal. I just wouldn't feel right taking your money. Really? Even without rent to pay, Juliet was still strapped for cash, so she wasn't about to turn down the kindness of a stranger, especially when it came to cash. That's so nice of you. Jim pulled the mower to the edge of the pickup's bed and heaved it down with very little effort. She still has a little gas in her. Hey, how's about I help you tackle this lawn? Oh no, I couldn't. But Jim put up a good fight, and truth be told, she was looking for an excuse to get him to stick around. She hadn't noticed any sign of a wedding ring on his finger. She decided to test her theory just to be sure. Well, would you like to use my phone? Let your family know that you'll be late? Jim peeked out from under the brim of his cap. If by family you mean a wife and kids, then that won't be necessary. Never did get around to settling down. Then he hit his mouth with the back of his hand and joked, and there's not much of a selection of pretty ladies in this town. Nodding again, he said, until now, that is. Juliet let out a girlish giggle before she had time to restrain herself. Her face turned as red as a beet, but she didn't care. She was beginning to think that moving here might have its perks after all. Juliet returned her attention to the hedges while Jim started up the mower and began pushing it through the tall grass. It cut out on him several times as he got into the thicker stuff. She was glad that she hadn't resisted his offer too heartily. With her neck pain, taming this jungle would have been nearly impossible. When Jim was about halfway through the front lawn, she stood and yelled out to him, Hey, Jim, I'm going in to get us some lemonade. Be right back. Jim stopped but didn't turn off the mower. He just smiled and waved back, mouthing the word okay. Juliet stood in the kitchen. She stared out the window over the sink and regarded the backyard. It would need as much work as the front, possibly more. She was certain that she could get Jim to volunteer to help. The thought excited her. She had just finished pouring out the second glass of fresh lemonade when she heard the mower stop. Juliet didn't think that Jim had finished the lawn, so she assumed that he must have run out of gas or hit another rough patch of grass too heavy for the old mower to make it through. Holding one frosty glass in each hand, she made her way through the living room and pushed open the screen door with her hip. She stood on the porch and looked out to see Jim standing motionless and staring at the ground with a blank look in his eyes. As she approached him, she noticed that he was standing directly in front of the ugly old gnome and gazing as if he were entranced by the malice in its eyes. It's pretty ugly, isn't it? Ah, Jim literally jumped a little into the air. I didn't see you coming. It is ugly, though, don't you think? It might actually be considered handsome in a way, he said, as if he did not wish to offend the statue. His attention began to drift back to the gnome again, but he caught himself and turned away to face Juliet. It seems like everyone in town has one of these little guys, but I never noticed one in Camilla's yard before. Yeah, well, I'm not surprised given how tall the grass was. Jim shook his head. No, even when Camilla was living here and having the lawn mowed by the neighborhood kids, I never saw it. I would definitely have noticed it. I know a little something about gnomes, You might say that I'm a collector of sorts. Juliet groaned internally. She began to question her thoughts of inviting Jim to stay for dinner that evening. Well, you can have it if you want. I plan to get rid of it as soon as possible. You can't, he almost screamed. I mean, I couldn't take him. It wouldn't be right. It's very unlucky. Really? Enlighten me, gnome man. Well, Jim removed his hat almost reverently and stared at the gnome as he spoke. Gnomes are a class of legendary creatures originating in Europe that could take on several meanings. Most generally, though, they refer to very small people, usually men, that live in dark places, especially underground, deep in the forest, or more recently, in gardens. Most European ethnic groups have their own gnome legends with a local variation. Despite all the varying forms, gnomes all possess the common attribute of being able to move through the earth as easily as we move atop it. Paracelsus, a 16th century Swiss alchemist, identified gnomes as a class of nature spirits comprising earth elementals as opposed to the air, water, and fire elementals. Other subclasses of gnomes include dryads, elves, brownies, goblins. Some help plants and animals, some help humans, some reclusive ones stay underground, perhaps hoarding treasure. By now, Juliet's eyes were glazing over, but she was trying to keep up her end of the conversation. And which type is this little guy? Well, out in the open like this, I'd guess he's one of these mischievous ones. The sort that plays pranks or even causes harm to humans. Now she stared into his eyes defiantly, but still with a sort of playfulness. Well, great. That's it then. It goes in the trash tomorrow. No, Jim pleaded. Please just leave it where it is. It's probably quite valuable, you know. Most of the people around here have those cheap hardware store gnomes, made of resin or plastic, you know. But not this guy. Jim stooped lower to look at the gnome, almost affectionately. This guy is definitely terracotta, and old at that. The artist sculpts a model and then casts a mold around it. Once the mold sets it is removed, reassembled, and then runny clay is poured in. He allows the clay to set against the mold's inner walls for a bit, and then pours out the excess. So he's hollow? Well, maybe, Jim said teasingly, unless there's a real gnome inside. Juliet friskily punched him in the arm. Enough, or he definitely goes in the trash. They drank their lemonade and resumed work on the yard. A few more passes with the mower, a couple more stops for lemonade, and they stood in the driveway admiring their work. They agreed that it wasn't too bad for the first day, and Jim offered to return the next day to tackle the backyard. Oh, you really don't need to, Juliet said unconvincingly. Nope, I started the project, now I want to see it through. That's the way my daddy raised me. Juliet offered to cook dinner, but Jim begged off, saying that all he needed after that day's work was a hot shower and a soft bed. Juliet paused to wonder if that had a double meaning, but shook off the thought. So they exchanged phone numbers, agreed on getting back to work in the morning, and parted ways. Juliet chased him back to his truck, though, and gave him a quick peck on the cheek. She couldn't believe how bold she was acting. You're staying for dinner tomorrow, though. I won't take no for an answer. By the time Juliet finished up with her own hot shower, it was dark outside. She toweled her hair dry and put on a robe. Stepping into the kitchen, intending to make dinner, she stopped at the rear window to check out the backyard and come up with a preliminary plan of attack. That was when she noticed a pointy, faded red hat sticking up from the tall grass. She immediately ran to the back door, flipped on the jelly jar light, and stepped out onto the rear porch. Sure enough, there was another gnome, identical to the one in the front yard. She was surprised that she hadn't noticed it earlier. Confused, she walked back through the house and out onto the front porch. The gnome that had been there was gone. She realized that the one in the backyard must have been the one previously out front. What the hell? Muddle-headed, she again ran back through the house to the rear porch to examine the gnome in the backyard, just to be certain. When she got back out, it was gone. She ducked inside the door and slipped on her tennis shoes, then went back out for a closer look. 5 minutes of walking back and forth through the high grass turned up no sign of the gnome. After standing still for a minute with a blank look on her face, she went back inside, locked the door, and turned off the light. As she did the same at the front door, she could swear that she saw the pointy hat sticking up from behind the hedge. She briefly considered stepping out again, but decided against it when a chill ran up her spine. Too tired to deal with this crap, she reasoned. She locked up, returned to the kitchen, and made a light meal. After a little television, she turned in early and drifted off to sleep, actually looking forward to another day of hard work with Jim's help. Juliet told Jim all about the gnome the next morning. He told her about the pastime of gnoming. Kids would cruise around town, stealing lawn ornaments from people's yards and moving them around, sometimes taking them from one yard and placing them in another. It was a nationwide fad, and in some extreme cases, kids would steal a gnome and travel around texting pictures of the gnome in different locations, sometimes across the country, to the original owner or posting them on websites. It was annoying, possibly illegal in some cases, but mostly harmless. Well, said Juliet, another reason that I don't want it in my yard. Maybe next time the kids take it, they won't return it. Jim pursed his lips and raised his eyebrows. I'm telling you, Juliet, it's bad luck. You're better off just letting him be. Now you're creeping me out. Stop calling it a he. As if the terracotta gnome itself wasn't creepy enough, Jim went on to tell her about so-called real gnomes. He said that gnomes consist of a number of different types. The most common is the forest gnome, who rarely encounters man. The garden gnome lives in old gardens and enjoys telling melancholy tales. Dune gnomes are slightly larger than their woodland brethren are and choose curiously drab clothing. House gnomes have the knowledge of man, often speaking his language. It is from this family that gnome kings are chosen. Farm gnomes resemble their house brethren, but are more conservative in manner and dress. Siberian gnomes have been more interbred than other gnomes have and associate freely with trolls. They are much larger than the other types and have an infinitely more nasty nature. Jim said that it is best never to evoke the ire of such gnomes, for they delight in revenge. So if all of that is true, then why is it lucky to have one in my yard? Well, explained Jim, garden and house gnomes are very protective, both of their home and the people living in it. Hopefully he's interested in protecting me and not the house. She slapped her forehead. Oh God, now you've got me calling it a him. Thankfully, Jim stayed for dinner that evening, although she desperately wished that he would stay the night for more reasons than one. She didn't feel comfortable enough to hint at it yet. She walked him to the door, but waited there while he walked to his truck. She felt a little creeped out by the thought of walking outside after dark now. He made it halfway down the drive, then turned around to give a little wave goodbye. She waved back, and then, after staring at the house for a few seconds, he walked back toward her. Her heart leapt a little. Juliet, he said haltingly. Yeah? I think that your gnome moved again. It's not here. She was really beginning to like Jim, but was getting a little pissed off about this whole gnome business. She considered telling him to go home and slamming the door, but now, more than ever, she didn't want to be alone. She stepped out and confirmed that the gnome was gone. Do you mind checking the backyard, Jim? No problem. Juliet waited at the front door, and after what seemed to be the longest minute in her life, he popped back around the corner of the house. He's not back there, he said, actually looking somewhat sad. Maybe you got your wish and the kids took him for good. Oh, well, that's too bad, Juliet said, for Jim's sake, but she was secretly jumping for joy inside. She was glad it was gone and hoped that the kids who took it never brought it back. After a second goodbye and a promise to get together again the next night for a real date this time, dinner at a restaurant, she watched him walk to his truck and pull out of the drive. She shut the door slowly and flicked off the porch light. Putting her back against the door, she sighed. Aside from the gnome business, the move to this new town, the house, the opportunity for a fresh start, and Jim were all working out quite well. Juliet went to the kitchen and cleared the plates from the table. As she set them on the counter beside the sink, she attempted to resist the urge to look out the window. She realized how silly that seemed, but still. Finally, as if in defiance of her fear, she looked up quickly. There, even closer to the house than the night before, stood the gnome. She and Jim went out the next night. He walked her to the door, but didn't come in. The date did end with a kiss, though, which pleased her. She was almost as pleased by the fact that the gnome was back in its original position in the front yard when they returned from dinner. She couldn't take much more of this joking around by whomever was trying to prank her. They probably thought it was funny, but to her it was not. She had no reason to enter the kitchen that evening, and so did not. She even avoided looking out the rear window of her upstairs bedroom for fear of glimpsing that stupid gnome. She didn't want to spoil an otherwise perfect evening getting upset over it. Juliet had just slipped her clothes off and was about to get into the shower when the doorbell rang. She assumed that it must have been Jim, so 1,000 thoughts raced through her head. Why did he come back? What did he want? What would she do? She pulled on a terry cloth robe and quickly padded down the steps, flipped the light switch of the front porch, and threw open the door. With a smile on her face, Juliet said, "Well, hello, stranger. Long time no—" She screamed and jumped back from the door. There on the doorstep stood that dreadful little gnome. She quickly slammed the door and locked it, leaving the light on, and ran back upstairs. Grabbing her cell phone and throwing herself on the bed, she punched in Jim's number and waited. It rang 6 excruciating times before going to voicemail. Juliet hung up and dialed again. This time he picked up on the first ring. "Hey, babe, sorry I couldn't make it to the phone the first time. I was just walking into the house. Miss me already?" "Jim, thank God. He's back. He's doing it again." "Slow down, Juliet. Who's back? What's going on?" "The gnome." The doorbell rang and I answered, and oh my God, he was standing there on the porch. Juliet began hyperventilating. Jim tried to speak slowly and in a soothing voice. "Calm down, hun. It's just the kids again. They're messing with you. A clay statue can't move on its own, and it sure can't ring a doorbell." Juliet took deep breaths. "Oh, okay. You're right. I'm being silly, aren't I? Why am I letting this upset me?" "I'm sorry, Juliet. I shouldn't have filled your head with all of those dumb stories. Gnomes aren't real." Juliet let out a little sigh as she calmed down. She stood up and began to stroll around the bedroom while she spoke with Jim. She reached the rear window and gazed down toward the ground. "Holy crap," she screamed. "It's in the backyard again. It's on the back porch." Juliet stopped. "Do you want me to come back over there?" She didn't even need to think about his offer. "Yes, please, and please hurry." "Okay, just try to hang on. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Juliet couldn't bear to be near the windows. In fact, she wanted to be in as small a space as possible. She considered her walk-in closet, but decided that would be overreacting. She went into her bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet seat. She waited and waited, checking her cell phone every few seconds to watch the time go by. Just 10 minutes, she told herself, just 10 minutes. She jumped as the doorbell rang. It couldn't be Jim. She'd only hung up a minute ago. She knew that it was the gnome again, or the kids who were pranking her. Either way, she wasn't about to answer it. Then came the knocking. She couldn't tell if it was the front or the back door, but she had a good idea that it was the back. She left the bathroom and poked her head out of the bedroom door. Her skin tingled and goosebumps raised up as the knocking started again. It was at the back door. Soon after it stopped, the front bell rang again. Juliet let out a little yelp and dove back into the bedroom, first slamming its door shut and then locking herself back in the bathroom. The ringing doorbell and the knocking alternated back and forth, back and forth. Then the knocking turned into hammering, as if whomever was there was trying to smash its way through the door. Now the hammering was coming from both the front and the back, again alternating. The doorbell began ringing incessantly. With horror, she realized that when Jim did arrive, she wouldn't be able to tell. Just as the thought came to her, her cell phone began to ring. Yes, Jim? I'm here, Juliet. I'm at the front door. No kids, no gnome. You can let me in. Thank God. She bolted down the steps and, after turning on the light and carefully pulling back the window shade on the front door, saw Jim standing there on the porch. In a state of near panic, she struggled with the lock, but finally threw open the door and hugged Jim tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. She began to cry. Jim had a duffel bag with him. He planned to stay the night on the couch if necessary, but he had a feeling that Juliet would want him closer. He had barely stepped through the doorway when the hammering at the back door resumed. Oh, that's enough, he roared. I'm going to beat the living shit out of whoever that is. He charged toward the back door and yanked it open. Who the hell? There was no one there. He and Juliet simultaneously realized that they had failed to shut the front door. He was first to enter the living room, but Juliet was just behind him. Her hands flew to her mouth as soon as she came into the room, and she screamed. The gnome was standing there in the middle of the living room floor, a trail of dirt leading from the doorstep to its current position on the carpet. Jim lunged for the statue and picked it up with both hands. He thought that it seemed surprisingly heavy, but he shrugged the thought away. He made for the door and ran out into the driveway, Juliet following a few steps behind. Screw bad luck, we're through with this thing, he screamed as he threw the gnome onto the concrete drive with all the force that he could muster. On impact, it shattered into pieces, sending bits skittering across the driveway. Staring down at the aftermath in the cold light of the moon, both Juliet and Jim were aghast. Their breath caught in their throats, and they were not even capable of making a sound. Mixed in among the broken shards of terracotta, there were the remains of a tiny humanoid skeleton. And that is the story of the garden gnome.
Boy, that story was a good story, but it also included a lot of history about gnomes.
That's why I like it. It
Yeah.
gave you a little more backstory there about what they are.
So is the lady in dark still with us, or she just walk away there?
Oh, I don't know. I've
think-
also got.
I think she fell asleep.
I'm still here. I'm still here. I was just fixing myself a glass of tea.
Oh,
It is now 7:59, so I think we need to do a. Be sure you subscribe to Abnormal Alabama on Abnormal Alabama on YouTube. Would you stop flashing the gnome at me? It's freaky.
I thought it had a good element to the story.
It's freaky. I'm gonna have nightmares now. Between that and the holy
I've got a question here. You see the face in the center of the screen?
The what?
The face in the center of the screen here.
Oh, this face right here.
Yes. So answer me, does it look better like that or like this?
I say like this.
My
I
gosh.
do have a question for you,
Go ahead.
Kevin. I got a question for you. What happened to Jason's face behind you?
Oh, Michael's.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
It's boxed up with my other
Sorry,
masks.
Michael.
It's in a box with my other masks right now. I've got something.
Okay.
So he's behind me in a box here with the rest of the masks that I have collected.
My internet's running a little slow tonight.
Okay, we have 2 stories, and we've already covered an hour of the show. Just 2 stories. I did a 30-minute one. You did a 30-minute one.
Yeah.
There's the other 2 that you've got 30 minutes each.
No, I've got a actual news article about a real gnome attack.
Is that the one down in Mobile? You remember that one?
I vaguely remember that one. This one, let's see if it says where it is. It looks like this is in Missouri, Jackson County, Missouri.
In Misery.
Misery. Misery.
Misery.
The one in Mobile is a leprechaun, not a gnome. There's a difference between a leprechaun and a gnome.
Oh, that's right. That was a leprechaun. Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Well, a leprechaun is close to a gnome. We can go with that. So that would work. So now it's I'm going to take her out of here because she's dark anyway. Break time, Abnormal Alabama. She kind of mentioned that, but I've got to promote this wonderful piece of artwork right here, right there. And stare into your camera. It's called Buy This Book. Buy This Book. Dating the Dead. I'm doing another in the series of weird dates. This has got a lot of good information, not just stories of people dating the dead, but religious views on this, like the Mormons and what they do, and cultural things, and also the woman that had sex with Bigfoot is in there, and the guy that looks kind of like Kevin that's making love to his car.
It ain't me.
Anyway, so this one's on sale. Amazon.com or Lulu.com, Lulu.com. I've told you this before, Kevin. If you want to get a book out quick, publish it on Lulu, because as soon as you get it uploaded and do the cover, it's for sale immediately. You don't have to wait like you do with Amazon.
Do they distribute it to other things like
yeah. Or you can distribute it how you want to, either way.
Okay.
And you can make a Kindle type book out of it too.
Yeah.
But go there and check it out. Lulu.com. They have actually been around longer than Amazon.
I'm gonna look.
They've been around for a long, long time. 20 years anyway.
All right.
Okay. So I get some of my books published there and some published with the Amazon. I've got them, some on both places. But if I'm in a hurry and I want something published real quick, they also ship quicker than Amazon too. By the time that Amazon almost approves your books, you've already got your books from Lulu.
Oh, okay.
They're just a little bit more expensive, but not dramatically more expensive, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's worth the cost. If I'm in a rush to get something done, I want something published right away, it's worth it. So watch out for my new one. I don't really have a working title for it, but it is, well, let's see. There's a woman that married a tree. There's all kind of interesting stories. I've been in the wedding business, so I look for these kind of stories to share. All right. Now, of course, myhauntedDolls.com. Kevin's got his books. Do you still have your clickbait book there?
Yeah, I got it right.
What'd you do your clickbait book?
It's right here. I haven't packed these yet. They'll get packed next week.
There you go.
Blood Painting, a novel based on a real haunted painting that I own right here in my home that came from Salem, Massachusetts. It was once owned by a practicing witch, and the story was so good I had to make a novel out of it. So check that out. It's in paperback and on Amazon, Books A Million, all that. It's also on Kindle, and it's on audiobook performed by the wonderful Lynn Thomas. If you'd rather listen to it, especially while you're cooped up during this crisis, that'd be a good way to pass the time. So check it out. And then My Haunted Collection, the story of the original dolls and items that I collected years ago that started the whole collection. tells the story behind those and some of my personal encounters, and even has a ghost photo in there from one of the haunted dolls. So check that out. myhauntedDolls.com. I've got them out there for sale, autographed copies. So check that out. And you can go through the link page and go to my YouTube website and see story videos and EVPs and things like that about the haunted items at my YouTube page, My Haunted Dolls, Kevin Kane.
Haunted Dolls, Kevin the Cane. All right.
Kevin the Kane.
I'm going to share, which is similar but not quite similar. Let's go here real quick. Right here in Alabama, this is Abnormal, Alabama. A few years ago, it's not a gnome, but it's a leprechaun. Actually took place in 2006. And it's the anniversary of this, by the way, because it happened in March of 2006. A little bit late celebration of that. But there you go. And I tried to upload a sketch. And hold on a second. Let me see if I can get this uploaded before I share the story. Come on. For some reason, I loaded one picture, but for some reason, it's not a good picture. So hold on a second. Let's see. See if I get the right. There we go. This one ought to do it. All right. And let me get back to the article. And so this happened right here in Alabama, 2006, March thereof. And when I get the picture here to share, I'm going to share the story of the leprechaun in Alabama, Mobile to be exact. So I'm going to put that up there. There's the sketch of somebody who saw the leprechaun. And here is, and there's also a video about it. I guess I could share that too. But it wouldn't be St. Patrick's Day, which takes place in March, of course, if we didn't watch. It's called the Crichton Leprechaun. But have you ever heard the full story of how the elusive tree dweller came to be? According to WPMI Scott Walker, the male anchor seen at the beginning of the video, the local NBC affiliate was called out to the neighborhood after hearing reports of crowds gathering in March of 2006. We didn't know why they were gathering, Walker said. The way I remember, we weren't going out there to cover a leprechaun sighting. That would have been a questionable decision. We were going out there to see why such large crowds were causing problems in the neighborhood. When our crew arrived, things sort of snowballed. People were looking up at a tree and saying there was a leprechaun in it. We started shooting video, and that's when the people of Crichton took over and turned this story into an internet sensation. Close to 25 million YouTube views, an amateur sketch, merchandising, a few pop culture references later, the leprechaun made history as Alabama's most famous viral video.
Oh.
So interesting. So what I want to do is here we go. Let me put this up. We're going to watch this video real quick. Just hold on a second. Here we go. And let me share this. So let me get rid of that and let me share this. And let's do a little Alabama leprechaun real quick.
Okay.
It's not a lengthy thing. So there we go. All right.
Time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view of what some say is ancient Irish folklore.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun. NBC 15's Brian Johnson has more.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in Mobile's Crichton community. Many of you bring binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
To me, it looked like a leprechaun to me. All you gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else in the leprechaun? Say yeah!
Eyewitnesses say the leprechaun only comes out at night. If you shine a light in its direction, it suddenly disappears. This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like. Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
My theory is it's casting a shadow from the other limb.
Could be a crackhead who got hold to the wrong stuff. And it told me get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
We'll get down to the bottom of this. Yes, still on there, guy. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, man.
This guy helping to direct traffic says he's prepared for his encounter with the leopard. He's suited up from head to toe.
This wars off smells right here. Special food. This has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish. And I just came to help out.
Others just came to get lucky in hopes a pot of gold may be buried under this tree.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold is. I want the gold. Give me the gold. I want the gold.
This is Brian Johnson, NBC 15 News.
People will do anything for a pot of gold. I mean, anything. You know what I mean?
Okay. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I haven't heard that before.
You had or not?
Yeah, I think I heard that last year.
Yeah, it happened way back in 2006, which is 14 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, I've heard it brought up a few times.
Yeah, it was a sensation for sure. So anyway, folks, there you go. The leprechaun story. It's now 11 minutes past 8 p.m. here in Central Daylight Savings Time on 4/14/20. Gosh, we got 6 more days to the next big celebration. You know that, right?
6 more days. What?
6 more days. It'll be 4/20/20.
Oh, 4/20/20. Okay.
4/20/20/20.
4/20/20.
4/20/20. That'd be an interesting date. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think now that and don't forget, he only needs like 11 more subscribers on his YouTube channel.
11 more.
I need about 1,100 more on my channel, Abnormal Alabama. He's way ahead of me. That's fine. But once he gets that magic number, then he can go to cemeteries. He can walk through people's doll collections and live stream straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And plus, it affects his ability to make money off of YouTube. And since he has, bought this palatial mansion with acres and acres and acres of land, plus he's got to feed his dad and brother as well. So he's got a lot of responsibility. Starving artist we are. But anyway, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Subscribe to Abnormal Alabama. I'm old and need all the help I can get, and I also have a lot of mental problems. So help me out, would you? We both have books, and you can find his books listed at myhauntedDolls.com. All his books, I believe, are on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, I guess, all the major sites. If you're smart and really want to help him or I out, you'll contact us directly and buy the books from us directly because of 2 reasons. One of which is we'll get the books to you quicker than Amazon will. We will autograph the books for you, and we make more money that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's win-win-win, and we will autograph it however you want us to autograph it. And they make perfect gifts. We've got Mother's Day coming up. We got Father's Day coming up. It's not too late for a late Easter present. You can, what better Easter present than the blood of the crimson painting, could you ask for? So anyway, help us out, buy our books. I believe now going into 8:15 that we have some more stories, Kevin.
Yeah.
And what's the next one? What are we titling it?
This one is not really it's called Evil Gnome Terrorizes Family. It's the name of the article that was published back in 2011 in the Examiner up in Missouri, Jackson County, Missouri. So I thought it'd be neat to have an actual real gnome story here. All right. And this was written by Jason Hoffett, a reporter up there. The noise outside the Thomas's window may have been singing or chanting, but whatever the noise was, it was terrifying. It was 3 a.m., said Charlie Thomas, and we were woken up by a sound that I can only describe as a raspy, gurgling sound. It was without a doubt the most hideous sound I've ever heard. It freaked us out. Thomas and her husband looked out their bedroom window and saw something that froze their blood. Standing by my pond, holding one of the garden gnomes, was what I can only describe as something out of a Grimm's fairy tale, she said. The thing that was standing in our yard was hideous and grotesque. The thing stood illumined under the motion detector light. It was less than 3 feet tall, had a long gray beard, wore maroon pants, a baggy yellow shirt, brown vest, and a dark waistcoat. I couldn't tell if it was wearing shoes or not, but it was wearing a reddish-brown pointed hat, she said. Thomas stared at a gnome. The thing that made this creature really hideous was its eyes and teeth, she said. It looked like it was grinning and its teeth were jagged and pointed. The eyes were little, beady, dark, and mean. And it knew they saw it. That thing, gnome, troll, or whatever it was, knew we were looking at it, and it reached into the pond and grabbed a koi, she said. Right there in front of us, it dropped it in its mouth and swallowed it. We had noticed that every time we put a fish in the pond, they disappeared, and we thought it was cats or raccoons eating them. After seeing that, I think that creepy little creature was the guilty party. Her husband pushed the window open a few inches and screamed at the creature, telling it to leave the yard or he'd call the police. The gnome simply grinned, laughed, and shot them the bird. They called 911. We just said that we had an intruder in our yard, but we honestly didn't think he was going to be there when they arrived, she said. They didn't tell the police what they'd actually seen. Oh, my pad is freezing up here, dadgummit. Okay, I can pull it up on my phone here right quick and get right back to this. Oh, well, here it is.
It's the gnome.
All right, here it comes. Sorry about that. All right, let me get it on my phone here so we can make sure we don't. Here it goes. All right, where was I? All right, here we go. When the lights from the police car shone down their lane, the gnome simply disappeared. We told the officers that the person ran off when it saw the lights coming up the drive, but they looked around anyway. When they were satisfied that it was gone, they came to tell us that they had only found some small shoe print, like a kid's. We knew it was no kid. The gnome came back night after night, holding a yard ornament and eating their fish. They eventually moved the ornaments and put the fish into a tank in the house, then realized they'd made a mistake. One night after we had removed the fairies and gnomes and fish from the yard, the creature showed up at the usual time, 3 a.m., Charlie said. When it showed up and found that the yard ornaments were gone and the fish were gone, it went crazy. It was yelling and screaming something that we couldn't understand, but we did understand that this thing was pissed and wanted us to know it. The gnome ran around the house again and again, screaming and gurgling, its feet hardly touching the ground. Then Thomas realized something terrifying. We had put a doggy door in the back door, and it was big enough for our dogs to go through, and it would be big enough for that creature to go through as well, she said. I took off running down to the kitchen, and as I got there, the dogs had started barking like crazy at the doggy door. She shut and secured the dog door, then realized the upstairs windows were open. If that creature can half run, half fly around the house, it was probably capable of flying up to the windows, she said. A fear hit me then like nothing I'd ever felt, and I ran back up to the twins' bedroom where they were both sound asleep in their cribs. Neither parent slept that night. They soon realized their days in Porterville were short. The last we heard of that creature was a very loud, screeching, cackling sound, she said. It was under one of the living room windows, and when my husband went to check it out, he saw the top of that creature's hat under the window. Right then, we decided that we were out of there. We couldn't stay there with that creature, and they soon moved. And that's the end of the article. I'm wondering if that really is all true, or
So that was in a news journal?
yeah, it's called The Examiner. It's in eastern Jackson County, Missouri. It was on August 3rd, 2011 is when it was published.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So that's pretty interesting.
All right. Well, my
Makes you
God.
wonder.
Huh?
Makes you wonder.
Wonder. That's what it's all about, is wondering. So,
Yeah.
my gosh, we've done only 3 stories, have taken up almost an hour and a half here. So we're doing real good.
Yeah.
And we haven't lost our voices yet.
No. I've got a creepy one about a troll if you want to hear that one.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Now, you're going to move this weekend. Is that right?
It's going to be Tuesday is the closing date. So,
Okay, it'll be after the weekend. No, it'll be this Tuesday?
huh? Yeah.
This coming Tuesday? A week?
Yeah, this Tuesday is the day that the packing company will come and pack what I haven't done.
Okay, so
And then it'll be the closing. And then Wednesday is the big move.
do you want to do a remote viewing on Friday night?
It might be busy because my dad's going to be moving in that Thursday. So we're going to be unpacking all this junk Thursday and Friday.
Oh, you're gonna move into your place there, or move to the new place?
I'm moving to the new place on Wednesday, and then my dad's going to come Thursday. His moving company is going to move him in to the new place
This week or next week?
next week.
Okay, I got you. All right. So you're within 2 weeks of being situated.
Next week is the whole big shebang. So this weekend I'm going to be working on finishing some packing, so
Right.
that way packers come on Tuesday. You know, they it costs per hour.
Oh yeah,
So-
you get
Make it quick as
quick and easy. So is your dad packed already?
he's got a packing company coming to his house on Wednesday next week.
And you ultimately, I understand, you actually work kind of a trade deal on houses.
Yeah, the ladies who I'm buying from, they're buying my house and they're gonna turn into a rental property.
Oh wow, that worked out good.
Yeah.
Made it
We got
real
this-
easy.
We got the same real estate agent. She and her infinite wisdom, she and her smarts, she got that cooked up and
That's
which
great.
I'm happy because she's in control of all of it.
Yeah, so those girls were looking for investment properties anyway.
Yeah, she's my real estate agent in there. So that's how she's able to get us together and
Well, God, so that real estate agent gets all the money.
well, that's too, but
Yeah.
that's pretty smart to do that. And that way she's got control over everything.
All right. Well, real quick, abnormalalabama.com, myhaunteddogs.com. Again, Kevin only needs like 11 more subscribers to get to the magic number. Then he'll have 2 reasons to celebrate next week. He'll be popping a big bottle of champagne for the new house and for the 1,000 subscribers. So get his 2020 off real good here, even though the rest of the world's falling apart. Kevin's looking good.
Believe it or not, we're almost halfway through 2020. We're already
Man, I tell you what, this is wild, isn't it?
yeah.
So you've got another story to share. Is this about gnomes again?
No, this is about a troll.
Oh gosh. Okay, so everybody that deals with Facebook and YouTube, you're familiar with trolls. So now Kevin's gonna give you the real story of the most ancient and earlier predating internet trolls. Is that right? So I'm going to take, we got Miss Silent over there who's all blacked out and silent. So we'll take her. I'm taking her out, and I will take myself out. This one I assume is lengthier than the article you just read.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not as long as that other story I told.
Okay. I'm going to be listening, but I'm going to take myself out as well and give you 100% control.
Okay.
Wait a minute. What's that behind you, Kevin? Right,
What's what?
There's something right over there. Kevin. What, Kevin? Don't look behind you. Kevin. Oh, Kevin. Something happened to the audio. Hold on.
There we go. The trolls of mythology, the creatures that are, I guess they're supposed to be bigger than gnomes and a lot more fierce. I think the first troll story I ever heard was the Billy Goat's Gruff, about the goats crossing the bridge and the troll living under it. But that's where we got the term for internet trolls, because let's go trolling all over the internet and causing chaos wherever they go, just like a mythical troll. So the couch troll, here we go. Let's see. All right, here we go. The old man coughed and wheezed. His bones ached as he slowly climbed out of the flea-ridden, tattered bed. He hobbled into the living room while holding his aching back. He moaned aloud, causing his dog, a shepherd collie mix, to tweak his ears, but nothing more. "You lazy mutt," the old man griped as he made his way to the beer and cigarette-stained lazy boy. The wooden skeleton of the chair bulged through the trodden cotton, allowing the old man sturdy support as he eased down. He still couldn't believe someone would throw out a good chair like this. Sure, it had its share of burns and a few stains, and if he wasn't careful, he'd snag his pants or scratch himself on a few unruly wires or splinters snaking out. But other than that, the chair was in great condition. "Pansy Wansy's wanting something new every time they turn around," he grumbled to no one in particular. "That's why everyone's in debt up to their frig holes," he said, while glaring at the mutt. Besides food, utility bills, cigarettes, beer, and soap, the old man hadn't paid a cent for anything going on 20 years. That's why he had a decent amount of cash hidden safely away underneath a particular floorboard in his bedroom. He'd never entertained the idea of a bank account, for there was a price to pay when someone else counted your money. The old man lit a Boreal cigarette and looked around admirably upon his second-hand furnished living room. Everything that furnished his modest shack he'd found on the side of the roads and at the city dump. He prided himself at his ability to sniff out the best, and looked over at the newest couch. Loading that couch up in his truck had caused his back to sing soprano, but it was worth every note. It was the nicest piece he'd ever come across. No stains, no smells, no tears or cigarette burns, not even sagging cushions or upholstery. He couldn't fathom why someone would just set it out at a Hannah Home charity site. It was in the same condition as the couches down at Flannery's Furniture. Not that he'd ever bought one from that turd. But one day he'd gone out for a stroll on the town square to look for dropped coins, and he stopped at the window and peered in at all the new couches. And he knew that sooner or later some of those couches would end up in his living room. By the time they made their grand appearance in his home, the couches would be worth much more than what they were sitting in the swanky furniture store. The old man stubbed out his cigarette and sat back in the groaning chair. He glanced at the couch again and chuckled, causing phlegm to lurch up his throat. He swallowed it down and chuckled harder. He had his fair share of roadside couches and half of his wealth he'd found inside them. All the quarters, nickels, and dimes lost by fools and more fools. He'd found dollar bills, $5 bills, and $100 bills numerous times. He even looked up and found 3 diamond rings, a gold Rolex, and a strand of genuine mother of pearls. Yes, over the years he'd found many riches inside the dark bowels of couches. He'd found pictures, and he kept those too. He leaned up, reached under the coffee table, and pulled out a 30 cal ammo box he had had since his stint in Vietnam, and positioned it between his legs. He gently unlatched the lock and looked inside. Smiling back at him was a snaggletooth grin from a child with a gapped-up haircut, an elderly couple celebrating their 54th wedding anniversary, a wild, punk-eyed teenager with blue hair and black nails, and there was even a lady with no legs smoking a cigarette perched on a bed. The old man wasn't a thinker, wasn't a philosopher, but he did at times question his motive for keeping the pictures of people he never knew nor will. But when those complicated thoughts crossed his mind, he waved them away just like a pesky fly. He closed the steel box and pushed it back under the coffee table. The couch was beautiful, he thought, and looked a little closer at the designs and the upholstery. With his head cocked in one direction, he saw Asian dragons blowing fire from their mouths. But when he looked from a different angle, all he saw were gold squiggly designs with a deep orange underlay. He didn't know what fabric made up the upholstery. He'd never owned a couch so new and so expensive, but it felt like silk to the old man. And the couch had a smell, too. Not a bad one, rather musky and piney. Yes, he was lucky. The old man sat back, closed his eyes, and laughed because he knew better than any moron that he'd be a few coins richer in the morning. The sun was up, but jaded by dark rain clouds. The old man sweated profusely after turning the couch so the bottom faced outward. "Just like a woman positioning to give me her goods," he said to the dog that snoozed on the floor and flicked an ear at the occasional flea. "Lazy mutt," he said. "I don't even know why I let your bag of bones stay around here." The old man got onto his knees. They popped from the weight of his beer belly. He clicked his box cutter out as far as it would go. The old man had a set routine for this, having done this many times. He had learned that not all treasure was lost between and under the cushions. The good stuff fell deep down inside the dark bowels because when people sat down, it widened the gap between the side and back walls of couches. He began to cut at one end and made a straight line to the other side of the under fabric. He dropped the box cutter on the floor and reached into the dark slit. He felt over thick metal coils and roughened pieces of wood, fingered the small nooks and crannies. As he neared the end, his heart sank. Nothing at all. "Sure as a dog's got fleas, there's got to be something in there," he said aloud. He frantically groped over every inch of the metal and wooden guts of the couch and finally struck pay dirt. It was round, a tad larger than a softball and smooth, but his fingers didn't recognize its dynamics. He felt a hollow spot and he prodded a finger into the round mystery and slowly pulled it out into the clouded light of day. It was a skull, a baby's skull. He was sure of it. While in Vietnam, he'd seen many skulls from adults and babies alike. This one was toothless with large round eye sockets. On top of the skull was a V-shaped jagged slit where the baby's skull had not fused together yet. It didn't have time. It looked alien to the old man. He dropped the skull on the hardwood floor and it clanked like a porcelain smacking wood. He shook while the hairs on his back and neck stood up. Its hollowed eyes gaped up at him. Fear surfed in his stomach. What should I do? The old man's thoughts ran like a hamster on a wheel. If he called the police, they'd not only take the skull, but also the couch. They were a package deal. But he wanted the couch more than any other piece he'd found. It was a gem. He closed his eyes and shook his head. No, there's no way on God's green earth I'm giving this couch to a bunch of badge-toting Barney Fifes. The old man confirmed aloud. He picked up the baby's skull and pushed up from the couch, retrieved his box and locked the skull inside with the pictures. Not a picture box anymore. Now it's a steel coffin. The old man shivered at the unwanted thought. He maneuvered the couch right side up again and went to his chair, reclined back and thought about the skull. He wondered who the babe was and why someone would murder a newborn. He wasn't a bleeding heart for no one, but hurting a baby crawled under his skin. It gave him the willies. He also felt a little guilty for not doing what he knew was right and moral, feelings he wasn't accustomed to feeling. But the old man waved the complicated thoughts away just like a pesky fly. He had drifted off to sleep, but something roused him from a forgotten dream. He opened his eyes. Night had fallen, and the living room was dark. As he reached for the lamp switch, a voice sounded from the new couch. "Don't do that." The voice was deep and melodic. The old man gasped and looked in the direction of the couch. The moonlight spilled in through a gap in the curtains, and he saw a silhouette sat on the couch. Panic seized the old man. "I'll make this quick for both of us. You've got something that belongs to me, and I want it back now." The old man reached further for the lamp switch, but thought better of it. So he strained his eyes to see the stranger that rattled off the demand. "Who are you?" "My name is Emos, and I want my skull back." The old man grabbed his chest and stuttered. You're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. I watched you take it." The old man was speechless. Fear shadowed his heart. "Get out of my house," the old man demanded. Emos laughed a husky laugh and said, "Give me the skull, and I'll be more than willing to depart for my humble abode." "I ain't got no skull. Now get out of here." "The skull is mine, and you took it from my home," the stranger hissed. "I've never taken nothing from anybody's house. I might be a lot of things, but one thing I ain't is no thief. Everything I get fair and square." Though his vision had adjusted to the moonlight, darkness still swallowed the living room, and the old man couldn't distinguish the features on the stranger's face. "The skull is in that steel box under your coffee table, is it not?" Emos asked. The old man's heart beat harder, like eager hands on a bongo drum. He had been caught. "Well, what if it is? I didn't steal it from your home. I found it in that there couch you're sitting on." "Yes, I know. This couch is my home," Emos explained. The old man couldn't believe his ears. "That couch is your home?" "Yes, I live down inside the couch. I'm a couch troll." It started deep down inside the old man's stomach and slowly inched its way up into his chest and then to his throat. He couldn't contain it any longer. He burst out laughing so hard he choked on his own phlegm. "That's the craziest gobbledygook I ever heard in my whole life. You need help, my boy." The old man laughed, wheezed, and then coughed again until he thought he would croak. Relief swept over him. Somebody who thought of himself as a couch troll was nuttier than a tin house rat. "Go on, boy, get out of here. I won't tell a soul," the old man chuckled. He grasped the lamp switch between his thumb and index finger, but let go when the stranger said, "There are no couch trolls." Oh, no, let me correct myself. "There are couch trolls in many couches, and this is my couch." The old man rolled his eyes in the darkness and said, "Uh-huh. If you live down on that couch, then I piss silver and I shit gold. I mean, how could you fit? A human can't survive inside a couch, for Christ's sake," the old man said and snickered. "I'm not human. And when we trolls burrow down in a couch, the couch expands inside, and it expands for everything we snatch. And there is plenty of room. You humans think you lose your precious possessions down in couches, but you never lose them. We reach up and snatch them, Emos explained. In fact, the lady who had the couch before you always folded her laundry sitting right where I am now. She would leave it stacked up nice and neat while she pulled lint from socks and went about putting it in the trash. And when she walked out of the room, I'd reach up and snatch what I wanted. A sock, underwear, t-shirts. After a while, she realized she was losing her clothes in the couch. So she stopped laying her laundry here. In fact, she stopped laying everything on this couch after her baby went missing. Oh, I've snatched some wonderful things. You name it, I've snatched it. You know, when you ponder on it, you and me are a lot alike. We both troll for possessions that aren't quite ours. The old man's smile completely vanished, along with his relief, and fear replaced his amusement. This guy is nuts. A grade A #1 fruit friggin' loop. Hey, listen to me, the old man pleaded. I have found a lot of couches in my day and have found some really nice stuff down inside, even money. But I've never seen hide nor hair of a couch troll. Why now, after all these years? The old man asked, although he didn't know why. He learned a long time ago that you couldn't reason with insanity. Perhaps you've only acquired abandoned couches. We move too. A couch doesn't last forever, so we move on to another couch when ours start falling apart. Sometimes we move for a simple fact we're bored. And when we move, we leave everything we've snatched behind. We don't take anything with us. Good for you, huh? Emos grinned. When I do move on, I'll be sure to leave the skull behind, and it's yours for the snatching. But as you can see, I still reside inside, and the skull is mine. I consider myself a patient troll, but even I have my limits. Emos clasped his hands together and said through clenched teeth, If you don't give the skull back, I'll snatch your skull. Sweat popped out on the old man's forehead and armpits. He'd seen many basket cases in Nam, but this guy took the cake and crammed it down his throat. He shouted the first thing that came to mind. I'm going to blow a hole between your friggin' eyes. You've got 5 seconds to get the hell out of my house. And the old man felt a swarm of fluttering moths in his chest. Blood coursed hotly through his veins, and his heartbeat pounded in his ears. He closed his eyes and leaned back in the chair. The old man had never felt this way before. It terrified him. Was it a heart attack or a stroke? No, it wasn't, he realized after a few moments. It was panic. Minutes passed while he desperately tried to calm himself. After his heartbeat slowed and his eardrums stopped banging, finally he opened his eyes. He looked toward the couch and switched on the lamp. The stranger was gone. The old man looked at the front door. It was ajar. He clutched his chest, cautiously got up, and stumbled to the door. He walked out onto his front porch, and his eyes scanned his front yard, but saw nothing except a dense patch of fog draped lazily on the trees. All was quiet and still except for a band of frogs crooning to the night. He closed and locked the door and looked at the mutt on the floor, who flicked its ear at the occasional flea. A lot of good you do, you son of a bitch. He retrieved the ammo box, slowly unlatched the lock, and looked inside. The skull stared back at him with hollow eyes. Crouch troll my ass, the old man scoffed. But as much as he hated to admit it, he was scared. How did that loon know the skull was in the box? He had to have been looking through the window, the old man reasoned with himself. Adrenaline conquered his panic, and he paced back and forth in the living room, staring at the steel box. He couldn't keep the skull now, since that fruitcake had been spying on him. He'd take the skull to the police station and tell them he found it on the side of the road because he still wanted to keep the couch. He just didn't want the skull in his possession now that he'd met Mr. Mentally Insane. So if he did come back, the old man could tell him the police had it and to go harass them. He lifted the skull from the ammo box, put it in a plastic bag, and walked out into the quiet night towards his pickup truck. He was relieved to be back home. His eyes burned from exhaustion. After 5 hours of questioning, answering, and lying, the old man wanted nothing more than to fall into a deep sleep. He looked around the living room, but didn't see his dog. He whistled through his horse-sized false teeth, but the dog didn't come. Lazy mutt, the old man grumbled. He glanced at the clock. 3:48 a.m. What a night. He'd never thought in all his 72 years of living that he would have experienced madness like this. Crazier than the Vietnam War, the old man thought and yawned. He sat down on the new couch and rubbed his calloused hand over its silky upholstery. He decided to sleep there, but first he retrieved his .45 from his bedroom, and then he reached behind the couch to close the curtains up tight. If by some chance the couch troll, or window troll more like it, decided to come back and peek in at him. Laughing, the old man stripped down to his underwear, lay down on the couch, and placed the gun on his chest. The soft fabric was cool against his weathered skin. It was more than comfortable. It was heaven. He felt like he was lying on a silken cloud. Man, what a find. Damn if he wasn't the luckiest son of a bitch. He didn't know who was. As he rubbed his heavy eyes, a 6-fingered claw with sharpened yellow talons snaked up between the cushions of the couch and snatched the old man, twisting and screaming, down inside the darkness. Later on, the workers loaded the couch onto the flatbed truck and climbed inside the cab. That's a nice couch. Yeah, it is. You want it? It'll just sit at the dump if you don't. Sure, me and the old lady's been wanting a new couch ever since the new baby came along. The workers stopped at the man's house and hauled the couch into the living room. Oh, wow, a lady carrying a newborn baby cried. It's the prettiest couch I ever laid my eyes on. Glad you like it, sweetie, but I have to get back to work. Got to finish cleaning out that old man's house. They kissed goodbye, and the lady sat down on the new couch. She rubbed her hand over its soft upholstery. Was it dragon patterns or just squiggly designs? She wasn't sure. The microwave beeped from the kitchen, so she got up and gently laid the baby on the couch. And the old man down inside looked at his lazy mutt while rubbing his yellowed talon claws together, waiting for the perfect moment. And that's the end of the couch troll story. That was pretty freaky.
Oh, my. That's a kind of a spooky look right there, huh? Wow, it's 10 till. I'm going to, I found one other little Alabama story.
Okay.
That I'm going to share real quick. So this is my seance ambience right here.
Yeah, I can see that.
We're going to talk to
Ghostly.
the dead. Join me.
Ah.
I'm bringing you into my world of the dead. Ooh. Okay, enough of that. Here we go. In Montgomery County, Alabama, we have a road called Well Road. It's off Highway 80, Selma Highway, down Mitchell Young Road, and cuts across a swampy area, woods and cow fields to meet up with Old Selma Road. Meets up with Old Selma down about 5 miles from the end of Well. There are a few places along the road where the trees are cut for power lines and for a Montgomery Water Works station. I believe in one of those clearings they're together. Well Road is pretty secluded. There are only a few houses on the same side of the road as the station, and the train tracks are on the opposite side. The ditch on both sides is always full of water, and it's pretty easy to get stuck at the station. We've had to stop to help one of my brother's co-workers before when he got his truck stuck in the ever-present mud, so you'll understand a bit of what happened in the first account that I heard about. The first story I heard several years ago, I'd say I was around 15 or 16 at the time, and it wasn't long after my brother started working for Montgomery Waterworks. One of his co-workers had been at the Well Road station the night prior. He was getting ready to leave after checking, and as soon as he turned the headlights on, he said that he saw something rear up in front of the truck just outside the clear range. He said all had a thick chest, much like a deer. Its arms and legs were long and thin, but instead of ending in hooves, they ended with claws that curled upwards instead. He said that its eyes glowed and it looked like it was covered in moss and pond slime. It got down on all fours and ran away. Well Road is, as I said, a swampy. Katoma and Pentala Creek are not too far from Well. If you turn right at the end of Well, it won't be long before you reach Katoma Creek. If you turn right, you'll reach Pentlala Creek. Both creeks have a lot of swampy and possibly alligator-infested sloughs you can see clearly from the road. It would be a stretch to say that this would have been a deer with malformed hooves that had to swim through one of those sloughs. We also don't know what looks like further back in the woods, what it looks like back further in the woods behind the station. Next story I heard took place about 2 weeks after the first sighting that we know of. A good friend of the family was over visiting my dad. He told us he had been driving the road from Old Selma Road. It's pretty common since Well is straighter than Michael Young and a lot safer at night. When a creature walked out onto the road, he described it much the same way as my brother's co-worker, but rather than startling the creature on the two legs, he claimed it was walking out of the woods where the train tracks are to get to the swampy clearing where it was first sighted. Now, before I continue, say that we never shared the story we heard with anybody else. Things like this don't come up often, and I'm normally the one that brings them up. He didn't hear about it from us, and the guy that I saw at first lives in another county. I can't say for certain that they don't know each other, but he never mentioned knowing him when my brother told him about the first sighting. And since this is Alabama, you may not be surprised at what my dad's next. He told us he sped up to hit with his truck and find out what it was, rather than stand there and take it like deer tend to when faced with headlights. The creature seemed to hunch down like it was waiting for the impact. Then it just disappeared completely. At this point, I was wondering what he was or how much he had been drinking, but he was sober, and it just makes the whole story a lot stranger. No one saw it again for about 2 months, and the next sighting, at least that I'm aware of, was by my whole family. During the summer, we take a lot of fishing and camping trips, and it was at that time just my mom, dad, brother, and myself. Metro Young had been blocked off to non-residential traffic due to road work, so we had to road to Old Selma Road. We had gotten a little late start since my mom had to work late, and none of us wanted to be out driving by herself that late at night. I'd say that it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Normally we'd leave early morning and not get back till late in the day. And it was just starting to get really dark. There aren't many street lights down Well, so we had to rely on the headlights for the most part to avoid deer and any escaped cows. The clearing is about 1.5 miles from Metro Young end of the road. And that means we couldn't see anything that far up. We were nearly at the clearing when we saw what looked like a deer start to cross the road. It looked up at the lights, but unlike a deer, it looked away and continued to cross the road. its fur was a greenish color, and it didn't really look anything like a deer. At this point, my dad had stopped the car, and we just stared at it. It didn't move slowly, but it wasn't in a huge hurry either. My brother ended up killing the creepy. My brother ended up killing the creepy thing moment by. Okay, that wording is awful. I wonder if we should have shot it. The irony is that we never had a gun with us aside from an old BB gun to kill snakes, and half the time we just used a machete on them. That's pretty much all I've heard about it. But anyway, there is in Montgomery, just south of us here, and I guess you know Old Selma Road as well. There's all kind of stories if you dig and look and share. And that's what we do here. Try to every Tuesday night. I think we're going to miss next Tuesday night because our dear friend Kevin is going to be moving to his mansion in his Graceland of Chelsea, Alabama. Oh, he'll be known as the Elvis of Shelby County. I can't get my lighting right. Somehow I messed up my face. Okay, that's a little bit better. I need to change my lighting. It's in my office here, and I don't have very good lighting, so it doesn't come out too good. Anyway, we spent 2 hours telling stories, and they were all interesting. We talked about gnomes and even a mobile leprechaun. And then the guy that was madly in love with a woman and died in a room with her corpse, huh?
Yeah.
So this is what we do, folks. And I see it along there. I'm saying subscribe to our YouTube channels. Kevin, just out of curiosity, check and see if you had any subscribers during this 2-hour bent here.
All right, let's see here.
Maybe you gotten a few more.
No, it's still the same.
Still the
Got
same.
11 more to go.
All right. Well, we'll be sharing this. It'll be archived on Facebook and YouTube, so other people will be listening to this later. It is now going on 9 p.m. on this Tuesday, 4/14/2020. And I guess Kevin is going to be very busy for the next Friday and next Tuesday. Hopefully he'll be ready a week later so we can continue this.
Yeah, probably the 28th will be the next best time for me to.
Okay. I may go ahead and do
Back
something.
home.
I may go ahead and do something myself. Of course, Catherine, are you still
Okay.
there? Catherine Marie.
Did she leave?
Oh, wait a minute. I guess I got to pull her up here. Hello?
I'm here.
Okay.
I've been just a talking and y'all been ignoring me. I was wondering why you were ignoring me.
No, I had you, when I put you off the screen, it also mutes you, I guess.
Oh, okay. We need to get me a good picture up there.
So here, before we had masks, when I was a kid, we never went anywhere without our hankies. And people quit using them for some reason. But if I pulled mine out. I had some brand new hankies. I thought, I'm going to start carrying a hanky around. Nowadays, we've got so tacky that people pop into their hands, and some of them don't even cover their mouths. But Kevin, get you some hankies.
I've got some. I need to get those out. I do have a couple of them.
I mean, if you cover your mouth when you cough and all those kind of things, and if you need to rub your nose, you don't have to use your fingers. So I'm all for bringing the hanky back.
I am too.
So this is the promotional for hankies in the third decade of the 21st century because we are going through a plague. And this is a genuine plague, by the way. So somebody's got some feedback in their system there. But anyway, I may do something Friday night. I'm not sure yet. And next Tuesday night, we may not wait on Kevin. I might do some storytelling myself. And we'll see how that goes. I will say this. Don't expect for this thing to end in the end. I just don't believe that for 1 minute. Be safe, people. this is real. It's not fake. It's not a hoax. People are getting very sick. Even the ones that survive it are going through a horrible time. If you read any of the stories, people that went through it, it's a horrible thing.
Kevin, you got a mask?
Yeah, I got a mask. I got a bunch of gloves left.
Okay, I just want to make sure you were covered.
He wears that
Yeah.
Joker mask thing.
No, the Michael
I
Myers.
got
That'll keep everybody away.
Yeah, that'll do good with social distancing right there.
All right. MyHauntedDogs.com, AbnormalAlabama.com, Abnormal Alabama Facebook, YouTube, on and on and on. And don't forget our books, Amazon and Lulu, LULU.com and Amazon.com. Just look for Kevin Kane or myself, either place, that book. Anything else,
Nope.
Karen?
Well, just everybody stay safe and have a good night. And be sure to check out our books and audiobooks.
And don't forget, folks, Kevin will be moving. And maybe once he gets set up in a golf, he'll let us do a little video tour of the new museum.
And welcome to the new members of Abnormal Alabama.
Oh, yeah, we had new members of Abnormal Alabama, so maybe that'll help your subscriber rate for YouTube as well. But take the time to watch this. All right, we're through. I hope you have a good night, Kevin.
All right, good night.
Peace.